So use extra, extra virgin olive oil. It's 100% pure, like me.
There are moments in television history that get remembered not for what aired, but for what never did. Moments where a network, a sponsor, or a cultural panic reached in and yanked something off the schedule before the public ever had a chance to form their own opinion. Most of those moments fade quietly into obscurity. A few of them, though, refuse to stay buried. They keep scratching at the surface of pop culture memory, growing into legends that outlast the controversy that created them in the first place. The Married with Children episode titled "I'll See You in Court" is exactly that kind of legend. Fully produced, fully filmed, and fully finished during the show's third season in 1989, it was pulled from the Fox broadcast schedule before a single American viewer could watch it in prime time. No official statement was made. No press release explained the decision. The episode simply vanished, leaving behind rumors, fan speculation, and decades of curiosity about what exactly was so dangerous that one of television's most deliberately outrageous shows couldn't survive it. Now, more than 30 years later, that episode is finally getting the full release it was always denied. And understanding why it's happening now requires going back to understand what Married with Children actually was, what it meant to American television, and why one banned episode became the show's most enduring legacy. To appreciate the significance of "I'll See You in Court," you have to understand the landscape that Married with Children stepped into when it premiered on Fox in April of 1987. American network television at that time was deeply committed to a particular vision of family life. The Cosby Show was the dominant cultural force on NBC, presenting an affluent, educated black family navigating life with warmth, humor, and moral clarity. Full House was delivering wholesome lessons wrapped in hugs. Family Ties was threading together generational politics with sitcom sweetness. These were shows built around resolution, around the idea that no problem was too large to be solved within 22 minutes, preferably with someone learning something meaningful in the final act. Married with Children arrived and treated all of that with open contempt. Al Bundy, played by Ed O'Neill, was not a father figure who dispensed wisdom. He was a man crushed by the weight of his own mediocrity, a shoe salesman who had peaked in high school and spent every day since mourning the life he never got to live. Peg Bundy, brought to life by Katie Sagal, was not the nurturing center of the household. She was a woman who had made a deliberate peace with domestic laziness, more interested in soap operas and shopping than in cooking or cleaning. Their children, Kelly and Bud, were not lovable troublemakers learning valuable life lessons. They were selfish, scheming, and utterly comfortable with their own limitations. The show was, in many ways, the anti-sitcom. It found its humor not in warmth but in dysfunction, not in resolution but in the stubborn persistence of failure. And audiences responded to it in enormous numbers, because for many working-class Americans, the Bundys felt more honest than anything else on television. The polished families of NBC primetime were aspirational fiction. The Bundys were a funhouse mirror reflection of something real. But Married with Children's willingness to go where other shows wouldn't came with consequences. From the very beginning, the show attracted criticism from religious organizations, family advocacy groups, and cultural conservatives who saw it as a symptom of moral decline in American media. Network censors reviewed scripts carefully. Jokes were rewritten. Scenes were modified. The show existed in a state of constant negotiation between what the writers wanted to say and what Fox was willing to broadcast. Against that backdrop of cultural tension, "I'll See You in Court" was written, produced, and filmed as a fairly standard entry in the Married with Children canon. The premise, on its surface, reads like a typical Bundy misadventure. Al and Peg, in a rare moment of marital ambition, decide to check into a budget motel for a private romantic getaway. What they don't know is that the motel has been secretly recording guests through hidden cameras. When they discover the existence of the tape, along with the disturbing possibility that their most intimate moments have been viewed or even distributed without their knowledge or consent, they decide to take the motel to court. The comedic twist arrives when they discover that their neighbors, the Rhodeses, had also stayed at the same motel and had also been secretly filmed, turning the lawsuit into an increasingly humiliating public spectacle for everyone involved. On paper, it sounds exactly like the kind of scenario Married with Children was built to handle. The humor comes from degradation, from the Bundys' complete inability to escape their own embarrassment even when they're supposedly the wronged parties. The courtroom setting allows for absurd testimony, misunderstandings, and the particular brand of crude, cringe-inducing comedy that made the show famous. But the episode crossed a line that Fox executives were not prepared to defend in 1989. The subject matter at its center, the secret filming of people during intimate moments without their consent, carried legal and moral weight that the network's creative team may have underestimated when the script was approved at the development stage. This was not a joke about Ul's lousy job or Peg's domestic indifference. This was a storyline built around voyeurism, privacy violation, and sexual exploitation, wrapped in comedy but undeniably rooted in real criminal behavior. The timing made it worse. Married with Children was already at the center of a growing public controversy by 1989. A Michigan homemaker named Terry Rakolta had launched a letter-writing campaign against the show after watching an episode with her children and finding the content deeply offensive to her values. Her campaign targeted the show's advertisers directly, and it worked. Several major corporations quietly withdrew their advertising from Married with Children in response to her pressure. The story became national news, drawing attention to the show's content in ways that made Fox increasingly nervous about what it was broadcasting. When I'll See You in Court arrived at the network's scheduling desk in that environment, executives made a swift and quiet decision. The episode was pulled from the broadcast calendar without announcement or explanation. It was complete. It was finished. It simply would not air. What makes the suppression of this episode particularly striking is the reaction from the people who actually made it. Ed O'Neill, who lived inside Al Bundy's skin for 11 seasons, reportedly found the decision baffling. He had delivered jokes about women's bodies, his own non-existent intimate life, and his deep contempt for nearly everyone around him, and none of those had triggered a network intervention. Katie Segal, according to accounts from people close to the production, found the script genuinely funny and entirely consistent with the show's established sensibility. From her perspective, the idea of Ul and Peg being unwitting subjects of unauthorized filming was perfectly suited to the Bundy universe of humiliation and absurdity. Michael G. Moy, one of the show's co-creators, later recalled that the episode had moved through normal pre-production channels without any significant red flags being raised internally. It had been the external pressure, the Rakolta campaign and the resulting advertiser anxiety, that transformed a completed episode into a liability. The crew, for years afterward, referred to I'll See You in Court as something of a Bermuda Triangle, a piece of work that existed but had somehow disappeared from the official record. It was not included in syndication packages. It was absent from home video releases. Episode guides from that era listed its existence only in footnotes, if at all. For newer fans who discovered the show through reruns or cable, the episode was essentially a ghost story, something die-hard fans whispered about but that no one could actually produce or verify. The first crack in that wall of silence came in 2002, and it happened without any fanfare whatsoever. FX, which had acquired the full syndication rights to the Married with Children library, slipped the episode into a weekday afternoon rerun block without advance notice or special promotion. Viewers who happened to be watching that afternoon suddenly found themselves watching something they had heard about for years but never expected to actually see. Early internet forums, still in their relative infancy in 2002, lit up with reactions. People were quoting lines, comparing notes, trying to confirm whether what they had just watched was genuinely the banned episode or some kind of extended version of a regular installment. It was real. FX had simply included it in the rotation as part of its library access agreement, and for a brief window, the long-banned episode was finally visible. The response was mixed in the way that genuinely complicated cultural artifacts tend to produce mixed responses. Longtime fans largely felt that the episode delivered exactly what they had always hoped for: sharp, uncomfortable, deeply Bundy. Others found that the passage of time had made the subject matter feel heavier rather than lighter. A storyline that in 1989 might have seemed edgy and provocative now sat in a cultural context that included real national conversations about privacy, consent, and the unauthorized distribution of intimate images. The humor was still there, but so was something that felt genuinely unsettling underneath it. FX aired the episode a handful of times before contractual changes and programming shifts moved it back off the schedule. But the genie was out of the bottle. People had seen it. They had recorded it on VHS. They talked about it. The episode's reputation shifted from urban legend to confirmed artifact, and the demand for its proper, permanent release began building in fan communities in ways that could not easily be ignored. Which brings us to where things stand now. The episode is finally receiving the official, permanent release it was always denied, included as the centerpiece of a digital collection called Too Hot for Prime Time, a compilation of banned, buried, and long-suppressed episodes from landmark television series. The episode has been remastered and upscaled to high-definition quality. It comes accompanied by new commentary from surviving cast members and producers, as well as a documentary component that examines the specific circumstances that led to its suppression, including a detailed look at the Recolta campaign and its broader influence on Fox's content decisions during that period. The timing of this release is not accidental. The cultural conversation around privacy, surveillance, consent, and the unauthorized sharing of intimate content has never been more active or more urgent than it is right now. What I'll See You in Court was attempting to dramatize in 1989, in the clumsy, provocative, often deliberately offensive style of Married with Children, has become one of the defining ethical and legal challenges of the digital age. Revenge porn legislation has been debated and passed in numerous jurisdictions. High-profile cases involving the non-consensual distribution of private images have dominated news cycles. The question of who controls intimate footage of themselves and what recourse exists when that control is violated is one that millions of people now navigate in their daily lives in ways that would have seemed like science fiction to the writers who crafted this episode. Streaming has also fundamentally changed the equation that made the episode unsustainable for Fox in 1989. The network's decision to pull the episode was driven largely by advertiser pressure. Companies that sponsored the show did not want their products associated with content that touched on voyeurism and sexual privacy violations, however comedically framed. In a subscription streaming environment, that dynamic does not exist in the same way. The episode can be made available directly to audiences who choose to seek it out, without the intermediary pressure of corporate sponsors managing their brand associations in real time. What I'll See You in Court ultimately represents is something larger than a banned episode of a raunchy sitcom. It represents a moment when popular culture accidentally got ahead of the public conversation, when a comedy writer's room stumbled into territory that the broader society was not yet equipped to process openly. The episode was not suppressed because it was gratuitous or because it had no value. It was suppressed because it was uncomfortable in a way that felt threatening to the institutions that controlled what could be broadcast into American living rooms.